daycare. This man came in and he had been, and the director, who is wimp of the universe, said, oh no, you better just give her his story. And I told him, I said, I think the child safety is more important than you having that $162 a week child in there,
Talk to your wife,
Yeah.
something like that, but, I mean, a daycare center really doesn't have the right to hold a child.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there at the time.
But you have to really evaluate, because this man, of course, is gonna say that he was perfectly able to drive.
Well, Morris Lehman is not gonna have Redwood and say no. You know, but something like that, you know what'll happen on that, state discretion. Yeah,
Who told you that?
they can get that with that.
I told you, I got a
State will take over.
card. You know what they, and I was really excited when I got out my mailbox.
Oh, no.
Charlie Chat. When I opened it, they want part millions. They're trying to sue Franklin.
There's where we are.
Nearly.
And they've got this tallest road is listed, arterial, or collector road. A collector road.
He might have addressed this, look.
It's more than just a little private road, it's like a main road.
Collector road.
It would look like a zero, wouldn't it, on the gun?
It's like the car wasn't there.
It wouldn't move.
I need one of those.
Antagonistic about it. Maybe you could be where.
29.
That's good, Morris.
Hey, Gordon.
He looks like that warrior, you know, that's been damaged, they put him back together.
Yeah. The Terminex man, that's what he looks like.
That police officer you see on 65 between here and Nashville,
Why do you
the
shake
laser.
your other eye?
Start building,
Special lanes, they
you know, like Washington State's up here and all that. This is where our property is. And the back of our property and or my property. A third of my property is listed as floodplain. Maybe,
Is any of mine listed as
yeah,
floodplain?
just right back there by the creek.
You just can't act normal when they're there. Get out of my face. I know he's there. Oh, Daddy, you're in trouble now.
Oh, you talking about me?
Yeah. Who'd you think she was talking about?
I was just thinking about it.
I wouldn't worry about it,
We have
really.
several pictures, several movies of Amanda's birthday, and they all look the same, except she's a little bit older. Everybody's sitting at the same places at the table. She's got her balloon, she's got her cake. It just kind of repeats, this is two. We've always been the good singers of the
All right,
band.
would you do that?
This would be a censored R-rated.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay, we'll pass.
Oh, no.
Metcalf, Pat Metcalf.
You know what she said to me the time she met me? She said, I'm glad to meet you. She said, your grandson told me that you were a walking encyclopedia.
But he told about how your parents had died and how you all went on your own and all this sort of stuff, you know. And she said, Pat said, I just couldn't believe any family had grown up like that. And she said, I just thought if he was making all this up, it needed to be nipped in the bud.
I always tell my classes that story about the teapot story, and they're always real fascinated with that. Of course, I tell them at the beginning, I don't know how much of this is true. You have to decide and leave it like that because I have no idea.
Very much identify with the fireworks.
But they always like that story.
Yeah, I never did get the truth. I never did understand all about that.
Chattanooga.
What do you tell them?
What's in that book
We lived in
that Mother has?
certain
Yeah.
town in Hickson, North Chattanooga.
That
Winnie,
little story
the book
book?
about Winnie.
Yeah.
We lived in a
I guess
subdivision
Winnie's
with
not in
about
the
100 houses.
Do you remember the story? You must remember it.
July, all the
Well, I remember it enough.
kids, throw know about Hickman.
My version.
I think of it in mine.
Flowers down in South Pittsburgh, right over the state line.
But you know what was in?
It was,
Interesting.
Very.
it was like, we divided 80s mixing bowl set. Because we both wanted the mixing bowl set. So we divided it, but he took 2 bowls and I took 2 bowls. She'd always, that big yellow one she used to mix up the rolls in, and then she mixed the tea cakes in the next size, and so,
And they kept saying, Bob or Jan, what do you all think about this? Jan and I stayed out in the other room rapping and said, we're done answering, we're staying out of here.
but it
We
was,
stood out there and laughed at it.
But you remember that she made tea cakes in this bowl, and that bowl is not just a bowl. That bowl is.
A tea cake bowl.
yeah. But it wasn't things that there was any value to, that we cared about. It was just,
I walked up to the
Not any
guy,
value except to you.
opened the door up through the cabinet.
You know all that depression glass she had? She had all the depression glass. That stuff's worth a mill.
She's got that, she's had it.
That stuff's worth a mill.
All right, let's get back to the teapot and when it came.
Are you the director of this?
Yes, I'm directing the conversation because while we were trying to get set up, you all were talking about the teapot.
go
And,
interview my mom and daddy about the
well,
teapot.
he just left, and I think that's a hint. Was the teapot there before your grandmother came to live with you?
Bob seems to think it was, but I can't remember that far back, so I couldn't help him on that.
I've heard how bad it was.
Well, and Winnie was Marlon's mother.
It was Marlon's mother, because she was the youngest child, Marlon was the youngest child, my mother was the youngest child. And then beyond that,
So regardless of how the story really, the accuracy of the story, regardless of how the story really, the accuracy of the book, we know that the teapot was Winnie's.
well, that's what we've always heard.
And the story,
Over the mountains.
pardon?
Came with Winnie over the mountains.
Now, so your grandfather, Marlon, would have been born when?
I really don't know. I really don't have it either. Ask somebody else. You need to ask Velma. He's sure he has all of that.
All right. Marlon would have been your grandmother.
Nail.
I mean, your grandfather, rather. And Winnie would have been your great grandmother. And so the teapot would have been when they crossed the mountain. That would have been the early 1800s.
$50.
My grandfather was the 13th child that,
Where I liked about my shoes at down here in Genesco.
and he was the youngest. And she gave him the teapot. It was given her because she was the youngest in her family before she left England.
Before she left where?
England,
She was born in England?
I understood.
Winnie was born in England.
She came to the United States, married very young.
That would have been in North Carolina or Tennessee?
That would have been, as far as I know, it would have been in Tennessee. Marlon was born in 1850. That was her youngest child.
Yeah. So,
And
12 older than he was.
I couldn't
he
watch
was
him gig for what
he was the 13th
he's crawling
child.
all around on the body. Couldn't get out, you know. But I hold my feet up all night long.
Ethel was his youngest
Don't think
child.
it hurt you. Well, they
Out of
well, we
6
ate one.
children, she was the youngest.
They are a
She was born in
salamander.
1892.
Two stories at the same time.
He gave her the teapot because she was the youngest child. And through that theory, it went to Charlie, and then he asked Thelma to keep it.
Yeah. Charlie, I put the,
okay. Tell that part about that story about when Charlie tied the snake around his foot.
his wife's foot.
around his own foot, and you tell it, then, Dad.
I don't know.
You're one of the chief characters.
No, not in that one.
Chief culprits.
Well, we was digging,
Keith Laffer on that one.
we was digging a pond to have water for our cattle. And I had Cordell Smith helping me. We was driving a team facing to these dirt scoops. Charlie was a little bit younger, and he went to get the water for us up there in the hot place.
How old were you?
Oh, I must have been 12-year-old.
Okay.
And Charlie was 6 years younger. He was about 6. He was big enough to carry a quart of water in a fruit jar. So he comes up and sets it down, and I go by him and didn't stop that round. I was going to go one more round to dump this dirt and drive back under the little elm tree where he was sitting with the water. And when I got around on the other side of the pond, I come across and dip up the dirt. I heard him a-hollering, and he was laying there kicking up his foot and just swallowing. So I turned the mule loose and ran through the mud to get over there. Hang on, boy, I'll get you loose from that snake. When I got nearly over there, he jumped up and started running down the road. He said, I just can't stand here. I was running after him, and I caught him way down the road. Well, almost caught him. When I got up close, I seen the snake turned loose and was laying there. I run up, and the snake didn't have a head, but it had a piece of wire tied to it. Where the head originally was, and he'd had it tied to his pant leg. And when he runs fast, he jerked it loose.
Oh.
And I didn't see him anymore till supper time came. He come in to see if he could eat some supper.
What about that story Charlie tells about the girl who worked for y'all and fixed the cereal and the cornflakes? You don't remember that one? That
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thelma knows all about it.
well, even Donita knows about
I know
it. Go ahead, Donita. You heard
Well,
it
what
too.
I remember is they had always been used to having their cereal out of a cereal bowl, and their mom was sick, and they had hired a girl to come stay with them to help. And they went to the table, and she had poured cornflakes into a vegetable bowl, put the sugar and the milk on it, and they were all supposed to eat it out of a vegetable bowl. So Charlie went and poured it out the back door.
He said he ran her off too, and I bet he did. What's the earliest thing you can remember, Mother?
Spending the night at Granddaddy's house and waking up and hearing the old clock strike. And it must have been April because I could hear the blackbirds singing and before the sun came up.
How old do you think you were?
About 3.
And that was in the house next to Rogers.
Yeah,
And that was a nice house in that time, wasn't it?
it was that time. That's been a long time ago.
And so you stayed there a lot, did you?
Well, I was there every day nearly.
Was your granddaddy a playful kind of fellow that fooled with kids, or was he?
Well, he believed in doing the work first.
He was kind of a serious guy.
Well, yeah, he's pretty serious.
What do you remember about your grandmother? Was she a serious type, or did she fool kids, or?
Well, she'd bake cookies, and they liked to do things for children, but they wanted us to be seen and not heard, I guess.
Is that pretty typical in that time?
Yeah.
I think I heard you say one time that your daddy liked to get down and play on the floor with you.
Oh, yes, he was a big kid as long as he lived. Liked to do the things, take us places, and go places with us.
Was he kind of a prankster, storyteller, or what?
Well, he was more of a prankster, I guess. He liked to have fun.
And tell stories and jokes and stuff? Is that a genetic something, Uncle Bob?
Now, I wish I was as jokey as my granddaddy was.
As your granddaddy was.
When did you get to go to the living room?
On Sunday, when they had company, all the grandkids would be there. About every 2 or 3 months, we'd always be there. Sometime that afternoon, he'd take us all into what we call the lower room, the parlor. We'd all get our seats and we'd sit down and he'd play the hand-ground Victrola. And he'd play several pieces. Josh rode a bicycle and the Mockingbird and a few things like that. Then when he put the one on, when the roll is called at yonder, we all sat very quiet. When he cut it off, we were dismissed and we went out.
That's the only time you went into the parlor usually, normally?
Only time I ever remember being in there.
We didn't go and play.
Now, Thelma had more privileges than I did.
Was she the blessed child?
She was the blessed child. She's the only one got to pick up the crock that they kept the tea cakes in and passed them. I could go in by and see that it hanging up, and it was a gray one with a blue stripe around it. And when it would hang up there, I'd see it, and I knew that there was cookies in it, but I didn't get to touch it. Then they would ask all the Lynn grandchildren, all of us, if we would sit down on the edge of the porch. If it's warm weather, we'd be out in the yard playing. All take our seat on that. Then Thelma got the job as the little queen. Going in and getting the cookies, and she'd come around. No, you didn't put your hand in there to get them. She reached in and got one looked like your size.
Was she the oldest grandchild?
She was the oldest. She's the only one knew how to do that.
And Jean was there, but she's younger than me, and so that's the reason my grandmother sent me to pass the cookies, because I was older and could reach the hook where they hanged up.
That was a big deal going over Granddaddy's on Sundays. One Sunday, Thelma, she came out and all in her little finery, and she said, I'm going to walk across through the orchard and go over to Granddaddy's. I said, you want to go with me? I said, oh yeah, I believe I'll go. Mom said, not like you look, you won't. You're going to clean up too if you go over there. I said, no, I'd rather stay at home. So I just laid around there, about really wanted to go, but I didn't want to go cleaning up, period. After a while, the phone rang. Mom answered the phone. Yes, he is. Must be talking about me. He said, there's someone on the phone that would like to talk to you. He's over at your granddaddy's. Hello? She said, I'm visiting with your grandparents, and I'd like to see you, and I'm going to have to leave pretty soon. Would you please come over and visit with me? I said, yeah? Who is it? Oh, I just want to see if you know me. Mama said, well, you'll have to clean up some. You have to take care, wash up a little, put you on some clean clothes. So I went in there. I got everything I could do to look the best I could. Go across through the orchard, and I get there, and when I walk in the door, I tell my gun, I said, well, here you are. I believe I'll go home. I'd never talked to her on the telephone.
Tell him about Charlie. Did he go in his birthday suit over there?
Who?
Charlie.
Oh, he never got that far. He just got as far as the bridge. Charlie.
Oh.
He's taking a bath.
You know, he was in the bathroom in the back of the house in the water. And some of them, where his mama giving him Beth Thelma.
Yes, it was.
And she went in the house to get the towel and the clothes that was going to put on. After she got him dried up, she got back and he was gone. Well, she run around the house and looked, and down from our house it crossed a big, deep gully. And she looked, and there's a little bridge going across. She seen him headed for that little bridge, and he got across. She went on through that field over to Granddaddy's. So he was on his way to Granddaddy's, didn't have any clothes at all on. So she run down. I believe he did have his a little dress on him.
No, I don't think he has a dress.
Well, it seemed like he caught something.
That was another time they went across the bridge and there was a hole in it big enough to fall through. And I was running to catch him, and I got hold of his little old shirt tail, but he is heavier than I couldn't hold him up and pull him up with one hand. And he fell something like probably 10 feet down.
How old was he?
About 5, 4.
And how old were you?
Well, I was about 6 years older than that.
Okay.
How much older is she than Charlie, Jean?
Well, she's 6 years older than I am.
And how much older are you than Charlie?
3. Well,
That-
really just 2.
That doesn't add up, Mother.
Well, don't take my word.
We were never too good at mathematics.
That's where you get it at.
Were your parents or grandparents musical?
My grandfather played an accordion, my grandfather Chappie. And they said I never did see him play it. But my grandfather Young played the violin. And then they didn't have radios and those things. And he'd get it, there's 7 or 8, 10 people in the community all on the same phone. He would call them up and he'd get his violin out. And he'd go through all of those violin songs, play on that, and everybody in the neighbors in the community listened to that. That was their...
Sort of a conference call in a way, wasn't it?
He's kind of a funny old fellow. So they say, I've heard my mother tell about, said he got a, I guess it was a, ain't het, what's they call that book? Something about ain't het wrote all these things that was going to happen. And he was reading it, he'd got one in the mail, and he was looking at it. And it said that the time, his prediction of what would happen in the 1900s. It said that men will fly through the air like birds. He threw the thing in the fire and he said, my children can't read this stuff. There's nothing to it. But I can remember the first airplane that we ever saw. Daddy told us he was going to town to see it. He was going to fly over Gainsboro and around, circle there. Maybe let people ride. And we couldn't go. So he told us that you go down there at this apple tree and look across that sycamore tree down there the river, and that's be the directions of Gainsboro, and you might get to see it. So we sat down under that tree all day, and sure enough, we did see the airplane.
Were you amazed?
Beg your pardon?
Were you amazed by it?
Not really. We'd seen birds fly.
Tell him about your grandmother's reaction when Uncle Fred took her for a ride, or Uncle Ed, whoever took her for a ride in her first car ride.
Oh yeah, he had been in California a long time. He came home. He stopped before he got home and run into a fellow down there at C.C. Gore. And he got this truck with a bed about as big as this table on he came down home and didn't have any top, and just the one seat, the driver, and one more person could sit up here, and the rest of the, all had to be in this box back there. So me and Thelma got in that and gonna ride back up the road with him. We was going up the road and she come in holler and said, Fred, stop this thing, let us out of here. She said, you're going so fast I can't count the fence posts. That's really moving up.
How old were you then?
Well, I think I got up to about 5 or 6 year old. I don't think I'd ever shot a shotgun or I've been riding those wild horses, but nothing unusual for a kid that age to do.
How old were you when you got your new cape that you wore to school and the kids chased you?
Well, I didn't get to go to school when I was 6 year old. I was 7 year old and went to school, but I didn't have a coat. My grandmother had a cape made out of velvet, and it had little beads sewed all over it. And I got to school and with that cape on, the kids would all run and pick those beads off, see who'd get the most beads. Must have had 1,000 on it. And I'd run to keep them from picking the beads. And finally somebody gave me a little used second-hand overcoat to wear. I was so proud of it and got to school that day, and I'd walk to go to school up the road with Donald and Clayton Chapman. They lived there on the farm. Come morning recess, I put the coat on. It was real warm, but I liked it so well I wanted to wear it. I put it on and went out to play ball. He said, take that thing and put it up. And I said, no, I'm going to wear it. And some of these boys hadn't seen it yet. He said, you don't put that up, I'm going to get a limb and whip you. So he was quite a bit older than I was, and that great big boy there. Well, a little bit slow about it, but I went and put my coat up and didn't wear it anymore and out to play ball in the hot weather.
What's the earliest thing you can remember, Uncle Bob?
I guess the earliest thing I can remember my grandfather Young died. I was 2 years old when he died. A 2 year old in June, and he died in the fall. They found a big river, and he had on the way to the graveyard with him. They had to bring him to the house and keep him all night. I remember that. I remember just before he died that his feet had been swollen. And taking a holly limb with them little thorns on and whipping his legs to make him bleed that water out of his legs. I didn't much like that. I remember then the river got up big one time, and Daddy had the hogs across the river on that island. And he had Thurman Gentry working there on the farm. He told Thurman, said, let's get on the horse and swim over there and get those hogs off before they wash away. Thurman wouldn't go. Daddy took me, I was 5 years old. He took me up on the horse behind him, and I can remember well swimming that river and looking back and seeing that horse's tail floating out on the water. And then we went over there and run those hogs into the river, and they swam across. I guess he saved all of them, I don't know.
What's the earliest thing that you remember, Aunt Jean?
Well, I don't have any of those memories that they have when my father was living. Because for a long time, I thought I couldn't remember him at all. And then later I realized I did have this image of him in my mind. And I can remember somebody with shiny boots, and I later realized that I could remember those shiny boots because I guess that was on my level, that I could see his boots. And I don't remember anything else about him in those early years that they remember, because of course I'm younger.
How old were you when your dad died?
2 something, I guess.
You were 2 years old in June, and she died in November.
So you remember the boots, and then what's the next thing you remember?
Oh, I'd have to think about that, Maurice. I don't really know.
I heard somewhere, I think it was Buddy that told me, 'cause you can't put a lot of reliance on it, but said he was a cowboy. Is that right? At one time went out to California and worked as a cowboy for a while?
I don't know about cowboy. I can remember we used to have a picture of him driving 16 mules to one wagon. I don't know whatever.
Well, he did go to California.
He was in California all the way.
Oil wells, okay. 16 mules, and what was he doing that for? I mean,
He's hauling seals and pipes out to the oil wells, casing pipes.
so that must have been sometime in the 20s, or, I mean, they wouldn't have needed oil much earlier than that.
No, he was out there in 12 and 13. Come back in 14. His mama married in 14, I guess. 15, somewhere along there, wasn't it? They don't use so much over, you wouldn't know all about
Well, as old as I am, I can't remember things that happened before I was born.
If you work on enough, you can tell.
You can do like Uncle Bob does.
Daddy, tell him about the Christmas you got the long underwear.
Well, that was the first store-bought, as we always said about things we got from the store. Underwear that I ever had. Mama would make it out of fuzzy.
Flour sacks.
Oh, it wasn't out of flour sacks, they were warm.
Oh.
But he went to town that day, and I think that must have been just weeks before he died. But because it was coming winter and it's getting cold weather, and he died in October. And he bought me some what we call union suits. I wasn't in service or anything like that. But I put this on that night, and I'd go back in the room where we was staying. There was 2 beds in the back part of the room. So I got my union suit on, and I go back to the bed and had a feather bed all puffed up on. I got on the bed, and that seemed pretty good, and I climb up on the headboard of one of these high beds, and I dive off in the middle of the bed. He said, "One more time with that, and you won't do it anymore." Somewhere or another, I had to do one more time. And he got me up, and you know those things open up in the back. He got that razor strap. And that's where I learned to use razor straps on it.
I remember the razor.
He just tore me up with that, jumping off that bed. We went to town one time. I guess it was the same fall. The owner and we went to a store, and he told us to pick out any kind of toy that we wanted. Thelma picked out a big doll. I picked out a little tin car that's about as big as that glass, but you could wind it up and it'd run around and around. So we cleared off from the floor where I could get started that night, and I started it, and we had this fireplace with a big log on it and a hot fire going. Well, I decided that thing's going to go in that fire, and I took out trying to catch it. He'd go around and around. I didn't know I could head it off. I run around and around, and about the time it run down, I run down too. But it never did get in the fire. It'd have been worse than it was when Charlie stuck. He had that Roman cannon, you know, he'd shoot 21 times. Put it in the, set it fire. Shoot that ball of fire up. So one night he said, "I want to shoot this tonight." I don't know where he got it. But Mama said, now you'll have to wait till it gets dark. It won't be any fun if you do it now. So he sat there and she said, put that up and wait till it gets dark. He said, I'm just sitting here holding it. Directly stayed up too close to the fire and it got fire. Instead of running out of the house with it, he's just shooting around in the house. Instead of letting it shoot in the fireplace, he's shooting it back under the bed. About the 20th time it shot, he went out the door and got to shoot it one time up in there.
You lived, were you still living at that time over in the little house across the creek from your granddaddy?
I was living the whole time I was there.
Oh, that happened in Gainsboro though, didn't it?
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I lived 1 year. I lived there till I was 11 years old. Across from Rogers, where I was born.
Till you were 11 before you moved to the other house?
Mm-hmm.
And then you moved to Gainsboro for a year.
I moved to Marston's Creek for a year.
I didn't know that you all lived on Marston's Creek.
We did. Then they built a road up there and we left.
Mother, you told me one time about living in Gainsboro for that short period of time, and you lived in a house and they told you something about it. They had a premonition it was going to burn that night, and your mother left the lights on.
Well, we were renting the house and had lived there for a year. And they came and told us long about Thanksgiving that we'd have to move, that they wanted the house. And of course it's their house and we didn't ask any questions, we just got ready to move. And they kept coming back to the house and looking around and taking things. There's several pieces of furniture and things that have been left in the house. And they was always searching around for some of these things to take home with them. And they'd say, well, now we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose this. And that's Aunt so-and-so's, and we better take that. And so we began to wonder what all this, why they were, after the house had been rented before other people had lived there before we had, and nobody had moved anything. So we knew they didn't mind people living there, and was not afraid we'd take anything with us. And they kept asking too, every day or two they'd call to see if we had moved or when we were going to move. And they seemed to have an obsession to know the time the exact time we'd be moving. And the river got up and all over the roads, and we couldn't move, and we felt very uncomfortable because the day that we were going to move came, and my mother left the lights on all night, so if anybody came around, they'd know that somebody was still there. And so finally the water receded and we moved. And the next night after we moved, the sky lit up and we could see the flames or the smoke and the light, not flames, from where we lived. So we had a suspicion that was the house burning, and so when we went to school, well, that was the first thing we heard, the house burned the next night after we moved.
When you left that house in Gainsboro, where'd you go?
Across the river to my mother's place, where
The Young place?
The Young place. Now,
Was your grandmother still living at that time?
Yeah.
Do you remember Aunt Jean moving to the Young farm?
Oh yeah. I was 8 years old. I don't want to get into ages again. But I was 8
You were
years
still
old.
3 years younger than Uncle?
I was still. Anyway, I was 8 years old when we moved.
Okay.
7 out.
All
We
right.
left Chapman Place.
Was it a nice place in those days, or was it beginning to? Was it a cold house or
You mean
comfortable?
the Chapman House?
No, where you lived, the Young
Yeah.
Farm.
Oh, I thought it was a great place. That's some of the best years of my life was at the Young place. I liked living there. I liked the river, and we had the horses, and when I dream about places I have lived, it's always that place. And
That house was finished up probably about 18 and 90.
yeah, I think it was
that-
probably about the same time as the Jackson place.
Yeah.
Chaffin Farm, the house over there was finished about 1890 in its
Well,
present
that's what I've
form.
heard- That's what I've
You
heard.
you could look at those
Sure
houses
about
and
that.
the
They'd
same,
be built at the same time.
same
They're very much
design.
alike.
Well, every house in Jackson County had 3 gables across the front, didn't it? I mean,
Well, on
Now,
Roaring
they were
River,
all-
I think there was 7 houses
Had to
like
go
that on
outside.
Roaring River
7.
that had 3 gables in the
Yeah.
front.
Why do you think, let me ask you about that, Uncle Bob, why do you think that it never occurred to anybody to cut a door between the dining room and the rest of the house?
I don't know.
I mean, that doesn't seem like a rocket scientist to,
My granddaddy built that house there
That was where they all
on Chafee
built.
Farm. He had 2 rooms upstairs finished off, pretty good. Look, there's 2 rooms and a hallway between them. When you went into the main hall, you went up the stairway into the hall, upstairs hall, and into one of the rooms. But the other room, you had to go into his bedroom, or the family room, and up the stairs and into it. You couldn't go from one room to the other upstairs. He kept the girls in one end of the house, and the boys grew up in the other end of the house. And then they had the dining area and the kitchen out in this wing that went off from it. And you had to go out on the porch to get in either one of them. You couldn't eat a meal without leaving the living part of the house and going over there.
Wasn't that to keep the heat out of the dining room in the summertime? When you were cooking on a wood stove and...
well, you could get from the kitchen to the dining room, just couldn't get into the rest of the house.
Well,
Really,
really,
they were built on a T instead of an
Yeah.
L.
Right, but it wouldn't have been a difficult thing to put a door.
No, I would cut a door in there after I moved there. And one of the bedrooms where you could go off into the other part of the house.
but we never had a door over at the Young house.
No,
We always, you had to go out on the porch to get to the kitchen.
Well, now
you
one,
got up in the morning, you had to go out on the porch and go into the kitchen and build a fire in a wood stove to cook breakfast. If you had to have a light, you had to carry a lamp, oil lamp with you in there. And you built the fire, and then you had to go back into the other part of the house where the fireplace was and get it warmed up in there and go back and cook the breakfast.
Well, this was an improvement, though, over the houses that had the kitchen separate.
Yeah, a lot of the houses, the old houses at that time, the kitchen was separated, was a different building from the rest of the house.
yeah, like the Maxwell house
The
and the
Maxwell house
Joneses, where the
and,
Joneses live,
Joe Loftus house.
yeah. Just
I-
like you
I guess
have your
if-
house and your barn.
I guess if they caught a fire, it would burn my cooking with all that wood stove and things. I guess if it caught that fire, why it would, you'd have a chance not burning the house where you're sleeping. Only good thing I know about it.
Well, I heard
They had a
about,
little thing between it, some of them did, that was covered, and they called it a dog trot. The dogs could trot between your house.
Kit's house had a dog trot.
Why'd they build them that way, kid?
I don't have any idea.
Well, I can figure why the kitchen was separate, in a separate building away from the house. What I never could figure out is why they didn't cut a door between the dining room and the rest of the house. But, all right, now, there's something that I never had clear in my mind I want to ask you. Mom, you might be more attuned to understanding what that was about than anyone because you're older. Strike that. 6 months or 18 months older, whatever. But I've never had clear and straight in my mind how your father died.
Well, he was sick on Monday and stayed at home, and that's very unusual because on Monday mornings he went up this was in the fall and in November, and he usually
November of what year?
That I don't know.
Okay.
And he got worse, had a sore throat, and the doctor came on Tuesday, and he said, well, he had tonsillitis, or they called it something as a quinsy, I think, or some name they had for the tonsils swollen, and abscess tonsil. That's what the doctor called it, an abscess tonsil. And he came and he told him then, he gave him some medication. And I remember him telling him, said, when you get well next week, I want you to come to the doctor, to the dentist, and have something done for your teeth. He said, it looks like we're going to have to pull them. Well, he's pretty young to have his teeth pulled, but then he had gum trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And so Wednesday, he was no better, and the doctor came, and by that time, this swelling in the throat had swelled, this whole face was swollen. And before the day was over, his eyes were closed, and he was delirious. And it was very evident that he had to have something, he was about to, I suppose, choke. Or the air passages were about closed in his throat. And they called a doctor and a nurse from Nashville, and somebody was going to meet the train at Double Springs that day, that evening, and they were, well, I guess they weren't going to be there, but they were going to leave Nashville on Wednesday evening, and sometime in the morning they would meet them at the train station. And he died before, and when he died about 1 o'clock on Wednesday night, and somebody went, they had to go to the station and meet them, but they just turned them,
Mm-hmm.
back, and they didn't come on to the house.
So it was really like an abscess tonsil.
Yeah.
Okay, I never really understood that.
Well, that's the best I understood it.
So then you at that time you were living at the house across the creek.
Right.
You're living down across
Well,
from your granddaddy.
yeah.
Across that little creek, across that little branch there.
Yeah, it's just a branch.
And you said one time that you were fixing to add on to that house. He was fixing to add on to that house when he died.
Yeah, he had the lumber stacked to start building, and he was waiting till he got the corn gathered and stuff like that done. He was ready to start building.
What was he going to add on to it? Do you know?
Well, some more rooms. I don't know exactly what his plan was.
More bedrooms and stuff.
Yeah.
Was there an upstairs to that house?
No.
What was your grandfather Young like?
Well, he was a great big man, and bald and kind of a strong looking fellow, I guess. And he was he was very social and visited all of his relatives and thought an awful lot of his nieces and nephews. And
He was kind of a politician too, wasn't he?
well, I don't know if he was a politician or not really, but he was always interested in what was going on in the community.
New
and-
politicians and
Yeah.
Well, why did they call him Squire? Didn't they call him Squire Young?
Well, that was just a
Honorary title.
honorary thing that.
Hold it just a minute.
Time they had that,
you came to visit Aunt Thelma and you were
Yeah.
sleeping upstairs and they hid your clothes, didn't they?
I thought you was talking about the town that got stuck in the river.
Well, tell about that.
I had a white suit, all dressed up. Got stuck out in the middle of the river, and the
Were you in a car?
sand, the sand washed out from under the lower wheels. It wouldn't go no more.
Were
So
you crossing up at the Overton place or
I
the,
crossed up at the Johnson farm. And anyway, I got out and walked out to the, and when I got to the bank, well, there was mud about knee deep. I said, how in the world am I going to get my car out of here? Of course, I had my pant legs rolled up, far as they could roll up. Waded out through that mud. Went, we were going to borrow a horse from Morgan Johnson to pull me out. He wasn't home. But one of the girls loaned me a mule, and I rode on down. And I thought, well, the only thing I know to do is go down and get Bob to help me out. Went and drove down there, and there's Thelma sitting all dressed up, ready to go. I had that legs in that white suit, rolled up as far as I could get it rolled up. Them, he had a friend sitting on the front porch in the swing, and she didn't know what to think. I don't believe she didn't know if that was me or not. They were both laughing when I rolled up, pulled up there. I got Bob. We went up, pulled the car out, and by the time we got up there, well, it was gradually in. It was there, and we were trying to get the car out. And I had my shoes in the car, and when I opened the door, the shoes floated out and was taken off down the river, and I took off after my shoes. Bob had pulled his shoes off and left them on the bank near that mud. And somewhere or other, the mule squashed Bob's shoes down in the mud. He couldn't hardly get the shoes out of the mud. We finally got that car out though, and Ryder Lynn, he was going to take care of it. So we went off and left it there, sitting on the bank, and went back, and Ryder drove it to town, and I don't know how far. I didn't know what had happened to the car. I don't remember about the
I thought Daddy told about one time you went there to spend the night and you didn't have any extra clothes with you
that would have been right.
and you went upstairs and went to bed and so they hid your clothes and the next morning Aunt Thelma kept calling you down to breakfast and you weren't coming and you weren't coming.
Can't blame me for that,
And
kid.
she was getting upset because you wouldn't come down and they finally had to tell her they hid your clothes, you couldn't come down.
Now, who would have
That
done
may have been one
You
Daddy
and
made up.
Charlie? Johnny be out.
We got into a lot of things when we was all there together.
Wait a
Well,
minute.
wait.
Come
Come
here.
back here and tell us about that. I'll get you coffee.
One night we was all sitting around there and talking about things. And talking to Charlie, he's a little fella, you know, but where he was afraid or not. No, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of anything. We said, what if somebody break in? What if somebody steal chickens? What if somebody steal their corn? All these things. What would you do? I'd go out and get them. I'd shoot them. So one night me and Joel decided, well, we need to teach him a little lesson. So we said, well, we're going to the store. We're going to have to go down across the river in the boat in the night and go over to a store. Everybody stayed over there pretty late in the night, and so we was going over there a little while. And we go outside and stay, wait a few minutes, and then we go down where we kept the chickens. And I got a hen, and Joel got a hen. We'd shake those hens, and they'd squall, you know, big and loud. So about 2 or 3 times doing that, here come Charlie out the door. Joel said, what's he got? I said, he's got that .32 rifle. We better get out of the way. Well, he come out and the moon was shining just a little bit and he could see us in the night. So we heard that gun go, pow! And the bullet go, right through where we started running. I threw my hand down and I headed the ditch. Joel was running with his hen. He didn't ever think to throw her down. There's a hay rake sitting out there in the field where he's running through, and he run into that hay rake and killed that hen. I don't reckon he'd have killed us, but almost did.
Not unless he knew who you were, ain't
Well, I guess he knew who we were. Tell him about you killing the hen that time. You better come in and lay it out like it was.
Well, we were going to scare the girls.
You don't need to take
Huh?
He's already told me.
You already told them?
Yeah, but we have to tell them twice.
Uncle Al.
One try.
Why did you, and I almost get in trouble that time, did you tell me to hit Daddy in the head with a hammer?
He had a screwdriver laying there. And I had you in my arms, and of course, you were the first one in the family, and I just loved that.
Younger than any of
I was
them.
carrying her around, and he was fixing the porch, fixing a board on the porch, and he pried up a board, reworking it, and you had the screwdriver in your hand. I said, hit him. And she cracked down hard, boy. We took off and didn't come back for a while. He wasn't very happy about that.
That was years later.
How long did you all, you and Mother stay down there with them on that river?
I don't know, but I had more fun that time that I was living there than I had all the time before in my life.
I guess like what Donita, Gene said a while ago about thinking about life, being a happy life. I think there was where it was. I like that better than anything.
When Uncle Al went in the Navy and y'all came back to live with us, I got this idea that Marva had me coming down the slide, and every time I'd go down the slide, when I'd get to the bottom, she'd use a switch on my leg. And I'd get to the bottom, and I didn't have any more sense than to go back up and come down again, and she'd switch me. And she didn't get in trouble, and I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. So Morris wasn't minding me like I thought he should. So I didn't have a switch, but I had a hairbrush in my hand. So I gave him a whipping with a hairbrush. And it hurt him really bad, and Mama caught me whipping him with a hairbrush. So I didn't get by as easy as Marva did. Mama took the hairbrush away from me and used it on me and broke it on me. So we had to work out some of those rivalries when we all got together for the first time.
I went to Greensboro one time. For some reason, there on the farm, I had to go to town. Donita and Marva went with me. And I parked, and I said, now I've got to go to the hardware. And you people, you kids just sit here in the car, don't get out. So I run over there, and maybe I was gone a little longer than they thought I needed to have been gone. I got back, and I lost both kids in the big city of Gainesboro. So I started around, I was looking for stores. Didn't see them. I went up and went into the drugstore. And I saw, quick as it started then, I saw Ms. Anderson at work there. She was laughing. Here he comes. She was like, I knew there's something wrong. We went in there, I said, Marv, Jean, and Donita back there at the table, eating banana splits with it. They didn't have any money. They just went up there and crawled in and said, bring us a banana split. I had to pay them off and get them loaded up and get out of there.
Marva must have been the one that knew what a banana split was. I remember when, do you remember when Ralph was born, Marva?
I think I do. I know I remember when Morris was born.
Well, when Ralph was born, and you all and 80 were living in town. And so Daddy went to town to get you and Morris to bring you back to our house, and he got Aunt Jean too. And she was going to be our caretakers while Mama went to town to help birth Ralph. And we thought that was really neat. I remember Aunt Jean fixing our supper, and the first thing is that we thought it was really neat because we didn't know she could cook. And she fixed us something to eat, and then she taught us how to do the jitterbug while you wash dishes. And we really liked that, because we never had seen our mamas jitterbugging when they washed dishes. That was before Aunt Jean ever married. She still was younger than Aunt Thelma and Daddy at that time.
About 3 years.
Still younger.
She always thought that was the greatest thing in the world to do when she grew up, you know, and we wouldn't let her do it any other time. That's why we got her to wash all the dishes.
Well, tell me, you all were, when you were growing up, I guess that there was some square dancing at a time that you did some square dancing or something?
Their daddy did all the time.
He did a lot of, did he clog him or square dancing?
Just regular square dancing. Virginia reel.
You never heard of square dancing? That.
No, I know what square dancing is, but there's a lot of different, a lot of people do clogging and what do they call it?
First thing you do is to let everybody in the community know that you're going to have square dance, except Granddaddy. And then you moved all the furniture out of the rooms, took down all the beds, everything out of the rooms. Everybody's in there. You either stood around the wall or you danced all over the floor. And that's just the way it was.
But your mama didn't let you all go in where they were square dancing, did she?
No, we've got steps in.
Aunt Jean, they want you to come demonstrate how to jitterbug when you wash dishes.
Okay, anytime.
Turn that camera around here.
Did they call it square dancing? I've heard some people call it play party. I don't know who I
Oh, that's square dance.
Well, some people, I've heard people say that.
First thing you do is get to Johnny Chafin to come with a banjo. And I don't know who called the dance.
We used to have square dancing in the forks of the road out on the, and there'd be 15 to 20, maybe more, young people get together and they'd have a square dance
I don't
in the
know.
forks of the road up there, not far from my house.
We'd always have that, you go through, when we was kids, go to dances when I guess we was teenagers. Was it down in the pawpaw patch?
What were you gonna say, Mona?
I don't remember who caused the square dances, but I remember some of the
Coleman Chapin, I
people that, huh,
Coleman Chapin, I guess.
could be, I don't remember
I
him.
remember who played bandit, Johnny Chapin.
Yeah. And Bruce Overton used to come.
Did your mother not participate because she didn't think it was right, or did she just stay with you children?
Yeah,
Or?
find 3 kids.
Well, I wouldn't have liked it for Bob to have square dances at my house and me be shut off in a room and him out there partying.
Oh, we were there. We were around. We just had to stay out of the way.
You get stepped on.
Yeah, you get stepped on. And Jewel Smith and her sisters, and Lizzie Overton,
Burrishes.
Burris girls, yeah. And started to think of somebody else now, but
You know where that Burris graveyard is? Down there at the end of the bridge.
yeah.
We laid a water line up through there, and we went up there the other day, and her sister's buried in that cemetery there. It was growed up, it hadn't had any care, but they had cut out a strip through there and went up in there with a dozer and plowed out a place to put a water line in there, and they got after them there before they dug out and laid the water line through there. And they laid it around the roads. They almost put it in the water line through.
I don't know how many people were buried there.
I didn't think there were 3. I thought the man that was riding the horse and come up and didn't make the turn onto the bridge and went off into the river. Burris. I knew he was there. But there was
2 or 3 of his sisters.
several graves up in there. Wade Burris, a big rock up in there. Wade Burris.
The Baxters are buried.
I don't know who they are.
They were.
Lucy and Jan and Jonah. There's some Lawson's buried there. Oh, sister died in 32.
Were you all still living on the Young place when your mother died? And then you continued to stay there until after you and Uncle all married?
Yeah, we stayed there. All of us did for a while. And then Bob moved down to the other house, down at the Chapman farm.
Well, when Charlie and Jean came home, they lived with us down there, didn't they? And then 80 lived down there with us.
80 moved.
So then we all eventually wound up back down there for a while.
Back down where?
Well,
The Chaffin farm.
At that time, that belonged to all of us.
Did it belong
But where did you and Uncle Al move, after you moved from the Young place, where did you move to?
To his mother's and dad's.
And then you went to Michigan from out on Dotson Springs. And then when he went to the Navy, you and the children came back for a while with us and then moved to Gainesboro.
Well, see, we had no earthly idea what was going to happen to us.
And Uncle Charlie was 17 when he left the farm and went into the Marines. And then I remember when he came back, the river was up really big when he came back from the Marines. He parked out on top of Marston's Creek and walked in to the house. And I was embarrassed because I had my sweater on wrong side out. And he caught me. And then we walked out that evening and went to 80s. And Jean, would she have been at Tech at that time?
She's staying down at 80s, and she walked in with him when he come in. She was with him.
I remember when Uncle Charlie came back from the Marines, and that was, that seemed like he was just a hero, so to speak, and he had to sleep in the bed with me. And so he said, this is how we did it in the Marines. He said, you roll up this blanket and you hold it under your chin, and this is how we slept in the Marine. And so I slept that way, tried to, and he was trying to keep me from wiggling what he was trying to do.
He'd stay there long after he come out and Garrison boy. Harold. He was down there, and I remember every day after we'd have lunch, Maylene would take him, give him a bath and dress, put him on clean clothes, and go out in the yard to play. And it's dusty out there in the place where he had it all stretched up, and he'd play in that dirt place. And they'd get him out there, and when he'd quickly get dressed up, they'd want to show him how to stand on his head. And he'd go out there in that pile of dirt and stand on his head. They do that every day.
Who would do that?
Charlie, and then Maylene dress him up.
Who was that, Buddy?
Yeah.
The funniest thing I remember about when living over at the Youngs with Buddy was one day I went out on the front porch and Uncle Albert rode up on his horse. He said, you better go get your mammy. That hog's got your baby brother down out there eating him up. Instead of him getting off his horse and rescuing Buddy, he told me to go get my mammy. The hog is eating him up. And he had him down chewing his ears. That's why his ears are big.
How old was he?
He wouldn't have been very... He wouldn't have been very big. He was younger than me. That's about all.
Those kitchen doors, those homemade screen doors on. And somebody took a big old heavy piece of wire and made a hook, put it on the door, and hooked it into an eye on the ball to fasten that window of that door. Charlie got up on that and he'd ride his...
That was Buddy.
Buddy. Buddy got up on, he was riding and swinging around, and he got to putting that in his mouth, and his feet flew off, and it stuck through his mouth, went in his mouth and come out his jaw, and he was hanging up on that door on that hook. Well, they got hollering for me out there somewhere, and I come to the house. Maylene, she gave up the whole thing, she run off. Donita had come and peeped around down, and she, ooh! I'm trying to hold him up, and I couldn't turn him where he could get him unhooked. Finally, I got Maylene come bring me a hammer. I don't know how in the world I got that hammer in there to brace it. But we took him to the doctor, and there's that hole all through his side. He just pulled a little swab through there somewhere and cleaned it out. He still got that little scar and blue place inside you.
Barbara, do you remember the signal you all used to always give when you'd get near the house when you were coming down for the summer? Do you, Uncle Al? When you all would come, when we still lived up on the Young place, when you would come, what is that road that came down and came into Roaring River Road up above us?
Down the Barlow Holler?
Yeah. You'd come down the Barlow Holler, and when you would turn that out onto that road, you'd go, doot, let's see, doot, 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 and you'd start, when you'd turn that corner, and when I knew the day y'all were going to come, Buddy and I we'd walk up and down that road, listening, and when we would hear you do that honk, well then we'd start running to the house, and we'd run just as hard as we could to get to the house.
They was coming down Overton Hill.
I thought they came down Barlow Holler Road.
No, we wouldn't have been in that.
Yeah, we did. Couple of times.
I don't remember that.
It was kind of an idyllic kind of a place, wasn't it? Pastoral and everything.
Yeah, Bob and I had said we'd sit at the end of the table, and Maylene and Thelma always made a lot of nice gravy, good thick gravy and biscuits, and we always had good old bacon and eggs and stuff like that, good stuff.
Me a skillet full of
Yeah.
skillet.
They made enough biscuits for thrashing. And we'd, Bob and I'd keep everybody busy passing the gravy and the biscuits. They finally caught on to us.
We'd always eat a whole country ham every summer when you all came down. We always ate a whole country ham that week, or that 2 weeks, or whatever.
Yeah,
Did you kids behave when you were together?
Sure.
Sure.
When your parents told you you couldn't go
I
somewhere?
remember going somewhere one time and coming back and them two and that one. I don't remember where you was in it or not.
I was around.
Maybe Buddy was.
I was only
But they were
3.
sitting on top of the house.
No, Ralph, you were on the top of the house with us.
You
yeah,
remember that?
everybody on top of the house, Ralph
He
was
was the
in it.
first one up there, I guess.
I went free.
Yeah.
We wanted to go with you, and you told us we couldn't go. So we decided to do something really aggravating. So we climbed out and sat on the roof
And they
waited for them.
ignored us.
Yeah, they thought they'd
I
really
remember-
get her goat by climbing out on top of the house. We just all went in the house.
And they
Didn't
just went
say
inside and
anything.
laughed, and finally we gave up and went in back in through the window. I get real upset with, or not upset with Bob, but I can't understand, because Bob doesn't even know, except for Keith, he doesn't even know his first cousins. And, you know, my first cousins have been the highlight of my life. We've always had such a good time.
Being there.
We had to, we spent so much time together.
Well, really, once a year, though, in the summertime.
Well, Mother and Daddy always said when we were going back to Tennessee that we were going home. They always called it going home. And I think it was more home for us than where we lived too, because when Daddy went into the Navy, it was like our world was ripped apart. And we went to stay with Uncle Bob and Aunt Mamie, and it was home. So that was going home for us too.
See, I can remember moving to Detroit. And when we first moved back up there, and I can remember there was little places, the houses were so close together, it was so strange. And there was a little place between these houses, and that was my corn, little lilies of the valley grew. And I guess I was looking for something that I knew about. And that was my cornfield, see? I mean, I had that, that's where I remember trying to explain to those kids what a river was. Now this sounds strange, but I can remember telling them what a river was, and they knew about going to lakes, but I was trying to tell them the river was long and narrow, you know, and all the water that they knew about went under the street in the sewer. And I can remember trying to tell them what the mules were, and they knew what a horse was, but they didn't know what a mule was. And I thought, these are the most ignorant people I ever.
Do you remember when Morris went through his preaching stage? when he was
Tell
going
Uncle Bob to send out the promises.
when he was going to be a preacher there for a while, and they'd come down, and Morris would try to be, he'd want us to play church all the time, and him be the preacher, and he and Buddy would want to be the ones that when they took communion, they didn't know how to do it, and they'd say, so we eat it all up, and we drink all the grape juice because y'all don't know how.
I can remember sitting there in church thinking, you know, they gave everybody crackers except the kids, and then they gave everybody grape juice except the kids. Then they would pass that plate around, and you'd have to pay for it, and you didn't get it, but you had to pay for it, but you didn't get any. I thought that was kind of
Rip-off.
a rip-off, yeah. I can remember a little bit. I don't know where. I never knew where it was that we went to church, but I must have gone a little bit to. Must have been to Marston's Creek to church or something, because I can remember going to church when I was very, very small, and that would have been the only place, wouldn't it?
No,
Where else would
we
we go?
lived at Gainesboro, And we went to Gainsboro to church when UL was in service.
Where the old Masons place was? I mean, the Masons was on the one floor and the church was on the... That doesn't seem, well, of course, I'm probably very small and very confused, but, and not really understanding things very well.
I remember you walked the first time when we went back down to the Chaffin farm where Bob and Nadine lived. You was out in that front yard. And that's the first time you walked. You walked after there's some chickens out there, and you took off and walked. I had you sitting out. I was out in the front yard, all squat down, and you took off walking after the chicken.
And I hadn't walked before then?
I was out of you out.
Do you remember when you fell on the stove and got burned?
I don't remember that. I know the story. Mother went out to milk the cow or something. I mean, I don't remember it at all. But how old was I?
3.
Well, not a year and a half.
After UL left, I'd go in every night and he'd sit in my lap and go get sleepy. So if he wouldn't get sleepy unless he'd do that. I'd go hold him and he'd go to sleep. Rub his little bald head. He didn't have a hair on his head.
Marva was the athletic one of the family. She could climb kitchen cabinets with her toes. She could climb anything.
Remember what I did with your cat? Put it down the outhouse toilet.
You remember when you
Never heard that.
and went out and found the kitten
I remember something
down
else
the
we did
tree?
in the outhouse.
There's a pretty little kitten down there, she was playing with it. I remember that.
Squirted her right on top of the head.
Near as you got to the house, the more you knew what
That didn't make a
she'd
whole
been
lot of
playing
sense.
with.
So how could you?
Marva, do you remember the year that Charlie and Dorothy and all their bunch came? We lived over on the Turner farm, and of course, we hadn't all been, well, Uncle UL smoked, but nobody else did, and I guess he didn't leave his cigarettes around for us, but Dorothy and Charlie had cigarettes everywhere, and so we decided to experiment, and so all of us kids got in the toilet in the outhouse to smoke, not thinking that the smoke would pour out the crap. Uncle UL comes charging down through there. What's going on in here? Nothing.
Pour a bucket of water on them.
He says, you all are in there smoking, let me in there. And so we threw all the cigarettes down there, and we go, no, we're not.
You don't see too many outhouse fires, though.
I think even Ralph was in there smoking.
That's probably the time when we were all up there. That picnic, everybody, that was a big time we had to
When we camped out.
camp out up there at that house,
And Dorothy had some of that,
young farm.
that chicken.
I have an interesting picture of Aunt Jean on the camping trip. She's got her pajamas, standing out in the middle of the road, and she's got her high heels on. Dressed for the occasion.
She's gone off, she must have a headache.
Right there.
Marva, why'd you put my cat down the toilet?
It scratched me.
Did anybody get it out?
I don't know. I think Uncle Bob tried, but I don't think it was successful. I think he died in there.
It was dark down in there.
Would you like to come see what you could do with our daughter?
Yeah. Just put the cat down in there.
I think people put up with a lot from me when I was a kid. I think I was a mean kid.
You were just athletic.
I don't think I was mean. I think I was into everything.
Oh, you want to do some of this? Do some bad and
We put the clock in the furnace so it would go through all the pipes and keep them awake all night. You remember that? We try to make them think of
This was too long to make.
And I don't know what the boys did that summer that they set up bunks in the basement and slept in the basement all summer. There's no telling what they did.
Stayed scared.
They'd always show up for breakfast.
You don't remember when you all set up cots in the basement?
No, I don't remember. I remember before y'all had the basement that was just a dirt floor. It was a while before you.
We finally put a good floor in there and we wouldn't let you all mess it up.
Was that when Buddy built the room down
Corner of the yard,
Yeah.
corner of the yard for each one of the kids.
I don't remember that.
Do you remember doing that? Pear trees and apple trees, different corners?
I think they were maple trees. I think they were maple trees.
Were they? I remember one time coming down, we piled out of the car and the first thing he said is, well, I'm glad you're down here to meet the mayor of Carthage. And I didn't think any more about it. We went up into town later that week to get a haircut, and I was sitting there in the barber chair, and I said, I bet you know my uncle. And he said, who's that? And I said, the mayor of this town. And he said, who's that? And he called the guy by name. And I said, no, Bob Chaffin. He said, he's no mayor of this town. And I got back to the house, and I was a little bit upset at you.
Well, one time you told Douglas that, ask him what color he wanted that Cordell Hall Bridge across the river, and you gave him a choice of green or orange, and he chose green, and sure enough, it was green. It was painted green. I guess that was the two colors that they had.
So he thought it was done just
He
for
thought
him?
it was done for him, yeah.
I remember one time Jeff was so upset at Buddy because Jeff had said something, Granddaddy said so-and-so, and Buddy said, have you not learned you can't believe everything he tells you? And Jeff, he was really upset. And for a couple of years, he stayed mad at Buddy because Buddy had said you couldn't believe everything Daddy said.
You know, you tell that story about you when you were coming home from somewhere, and I guess it's somewhere where you didn't think you really ought to have been anyway, and you heard the footsteps behind you.
That cave.
Yeah, I went down to that cave one night. They had a dancing place down there, and they said it's going to be a big night. That an old lady, from over on Mill Creek.
Addie Bowes.
Yeah, Ed Bowles. And her bunch is going to be there that night. I thought, man, I've got to see this. So I go down there, and they was sure enough there, and they danced a little, and the guys got to drinking a little around there. Looked like a big fight going to start, and I thought, boy, I better get up the road. Get away from here. I don't want to go away from here. Any scars on me. I got up the road a little piece, and I heard somebody's feet pop, 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 pop. They kept getting a little closer, and I got a little faster, and they kept coming. Particularly, I was running. About that, I'm give out. I've got to stop. I'll just fall over against the side of this bluff here and stop. About the time I got over against that, here went that Garrison guy, Mont Garrett boy. He went by me. He said, "Son, you better come on. They're coming this way." He was running away. I thought somebody after me. He passed me. I got up speed here. We run up that road with making time.
What they had down there, the Youngs had to steal up their house, and they sold liquor down there in that cave. At you know, mouth of that
Palace Hall.
Palace Hall. And every Saturday night, I guess, and Sunday night too, they just about they had to fight A lot of people drinking. That's
You know,
some
you
place
run
to
around
stay
the
away
park.
from.
You're going up that dark road at night, and you hear them big feet pop, 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 coming and getting closer and closer. You run as hard as you can run, they seem to get closer and closer at that. And then you just fall out. Say, come on, you better come on, boy. We'll kill all of us.
Well, I'll have to say I feel sorry for all you kids that weren't the first one in the family.
Yeah, yeah, I do too.
Because it was kind of nice being the first one in the family. I sure got a lot of attention. I got a lot of attention, and then when Aunt Jean went to work in Michigan, she would buy Marvin and me dresses and have our pictures made and all sorts of stuff, because she wasn't married and she was working.
I don't know about that. I think I got my share of attention.
Well, the baby and the oldest.
It's nice the way they staggered us out.
Yeah.
That one family had one every year.
Don't have a chance to.
Middle ones are best adjusted though, aren't they? And they're what they say.
Adjusted to
Well, I'll tell you what, it's good people have children while they're young instead of when they get old.
No, wait a minute.
Well, what was your mother like? Was she a happy person? Or?
Yes. She had a pleasant personality, and she did a lot of reading, and I don't know, she just seemed to know a lot of things that most people that we knew didn't know.
I never did know her. She's one of the smartest persons that ever was.
Well, I knew she was smarter than a lot of people.
I just wonder if she's as smart as I thought she was.
Well, maybe not.
She is pretty hard to fool about things.
She went to school longer than most people did in that country. She was.
Well, she's a high school graduate. She would have been more than most people.
Oh yeah.
Didn't she go to Pleasant Hill to the boarding school?
Yeah.
Didn't your dad go there too?
I can remember before they built
he didn't
Pacific,
stay there
there's an old house up there, and them wanting her. There's talk of it. I don't know if she's wanting to. Or if he's wanting. The county's going to get her to teach school there in that old house till they built Pacific School. I didn't think that much of that, but I thought Mom was supposed to be at home. She wasn't supposed to be up there watching me at school.
Now, tell us about Charlie and his Indian bones at the house.
Well, that's up there at the Young house. Dug Indian graves had, I guess, a bushel or two of bones. Wasn't too many of them. And Mama decided she didn't want to keep in my house, and Charlie took a plank loose upstairs and dropped him down the wall, and I guess they're still in that house.
Somebody's gonna tear down that house and find all those bones in there.
You think we'll remember some for kids?
A lot of Indian arrows too.
Charlie says he buried some of them about halfway up that hill there.
Out on top of the hill, there was Indian graves. Now, I know that one time we was flying at the end of the potato patch out there, and fly run under a slate rock, turned it, that we looked under there, and there was a skeleton. We lit that back down, and it's in about 10 foot of the corner of the barn down there. That it's still there for it, I know.
Is there a grave under Roger's house?
Where he goes in on his carport. Under the carport.
An Indian grave?
No, it had a homemade casket. I knew it was out there somewhere, but the rock had got loose and I drug it out. He got started to build a house, and he wanted me to come up there and help him locate it. We went up there and took dozering around right off the sod out there in the meadow about that deep, and you can see the outline of the grave. We took post hole diggers and dug down in there, and we got to picking up square nails and toenails. We just put it all back. He moved his house a little bit where the concrete from going in on the carport would be over it and left it right there. Gwen don't know it's there. She thought it's way over there.
Maybe we ought to send her a copy of this tape.
You send her a copy of that tape. I won't be the only dead.
That's not a threat, that's a promise.
Well, now, I've heard, Mother, that you talk about your mother remembered a little black child that she, and I believe you said a little blind child that lived on the Gore farm. There were still black people on the Gore farm when she was a little girl.
Yeah.
They moved out and moved to Carthage. And after I moved to Carthage, way back when I first moved there, those people, I met some of those old people and they knew my mother. And one of those men down there.
Did they go by the name Gore? The white people?
They were Gores.
Well, in more ways than just being, yeah.
They didn't just take the Gore name, their name. They were born with the Gore name.
You know, I don't know, I've never heard anybody mention, don't know anything about it. But it's all, people will always, you can go around there and talk to people about those Gores, and one that went with Albert, they went to Washington with him, this old lady did, she had 2 kids. Ab and, forgot what the girl's name was.
The mama was Martha.
Martha. They went up there and lived with them. I've never heard it. But I've always had a suspicion, remembering about the Gores and everything, that I figured out that there was probably some connection back somewhere. And his people in the Gores, he's kin to the Gores up there, you know. What the connection might have been. Might have been closer than, she was one of those Gores groups.
Well, the ones from Carthage down there, they visited, what, the Gore sister?
Yeah, one of them, I've always heard she's half-sister to the Gores.
Well, they didn't.
They didn't,
No, they didn't deny.
Well, this,
Did your relatives not ever have slaves?
not that I know of.
Do what now?
I asked if their relatives ever had slaves.
Daddy's people, some of them did.
Yeah.
300
years ago, they had slaves.
No, but I mean up there at Dodson Branch somewhere.
No, not
I thought that's what you
not
said. That we went out in that graveyard.
Well, there were slaves out there, wasn't nobody, our people, or my people knew. They were, the people that owned them, they buried them in the same area. They were buried in the same area, the people that they worked for. So I heard. I don't know if that's true.
Well, that's pretty typical. They didn't have
I know
separate
where they were
graveyards.
buried, up there in the farthest corner from the church building.
Of course, that's what happened there at the Gores, you know. They were not the slaves in any time that Mama even knew about it, but their parents had been slaves and they just settled there on the farm and worked for the Gores anyway.
There's no slaves further up the river than that though, right?
I don't know. You know, there on the Gore farm, right across from Rogers, look over there in that Cedar Grove, is where the first county court was ever held in Jackson County. Beginning of
So your mother was a pleasant
kind of a woman, and I mean, of course, it must have been devastating for her. I mean, she had a lot of.
Well, she had a big responsibility. But she
I remember when the
never,
courthouse.
never complained about anything or anybody.
I remember when the courthouse was burning, and there at Gainsboro in 1926 it burned. In 27 they built one back. And I can remember Thomas and Chapin and different ones stopping and coming by and talking to her about what for the county to do, you know, about building that back and what would they do about the burning things. I don't know how she knew anything about it, but I can remember them stopping and talking to her about it. We were all missing something.
Yeah, they are all that.
I think they're all going in there to eat.
Well, we can take, we'll just cut the thing off. I think they're going down to the house or something. Well, not what house?
Come on in.
Where are we going?
You're what?
We're going.
Going to pick up Doug? Okay.
I doubt they're going to eat this early.
No, I don't think so. I think we better go.
Whatever you think.
See on that.
Well, I'm not sure I can drive home. Well,
You better not then, if you're not sure.
Y'all gonna spend the night?
why don't you do that?
We can get up
Stay
in the
the
morning
night,
and go.
Uncle Bob, and we'll put Dean and Jennifer downstairs in our extra bed, and we'll pull out the hide bed and put Sarah on it.
And you can stay right in here. Well, don't take up your room, but it would look better over here.
Oh, you don't need to go. You don't need to go home.
We've got
Kind of
plenty
dangerous.
of room here.
We got lots of room.
Since you can't see it now.
Dean, if you want to, when you get over there.
Kind of dangerous.
No,
And if these two won't put you
I hope
up, we
so,
got a
too.
double bed over in our place.
Are you gonna eat
Off the
some
dark.
of these?
If I ever get a chance.
But
I think it's okay.
Miles,
the,
a week, last 2
the
weeks.
sound, I hope. will go
Pay
down.
any attention.
Another 120
Are you
miles.
gonna leave us, Amanda?
Well, it's less than that because it's probably, how far are you from the interstate?
Raft.
12 miles?
Raft,
Yep.
maybe, Donita and Bob
I'm missing from it, I guess.
stay with you.
Put them on camera,
Yeah, what about
they get passionate.
Been
I
telling
just
me.
can't remember what the right questions are. Yeah, and I will probably have to scrounge around for something to eat, but I bet there's something
I
left
bet
over.
there's not anything in there. You're sleepy.
Did you date this
You didn't
tape?
get through
No, I
half of those
didn't.
stories. I
Well,
wanted
then
to
tell
what
the
you
world what the
were
date
gonna
is.
be,
The
but
date
I don't
is
wanna know
December the 11th, 1993.
No,
Okay.
sir.
And this is now 5:28 in the afternoon, in the evening.
And where are we?
Planet Earth.
That's the ET tomorrow night.
E.T. is the movie E.T.
It's on TV.
Oh,
I've seen it once.
How long have y'all been married now?
Huh?
How long have y'all been married now?
Oh, it'll be 2 years, April 11th. Long time.
Seems like 20, right?
No, not really.
Lovell, your place is on Cub Creek,
Cub Creek.
but you seem to know everybody on Rock River.
I grew up, I was
Probably getting into that
14
food.
and I left Roy River.
Yeah, better.
Where did you?
I gotta walk
I
around.
lived between the Lees and the
I
Roddies. You
sit there
remember
too
the
long.
house
Roddy's are down at the end of the mouth of the You river. know where the park down there is? Yeah.
right across
So
from the
you
park? There's a little,
You go right straight up to the road. They used to have an entrance up there. But it's not-
Yeah.
All right, just on up the river there, just a step from that, used to be a little house there, and it's gone now.
there's a,
She lived there in that house there.
yeah, there's a bungalow, wasn't that what they called them back then? With the things out front.
Hello there, darling.
She's a
Crawl
cutie.
across.
Say hi.
She's my friend.
How old are you now?
Hi.
Is that all? Are you going to school next? Are you going to school next year?
You're not married, are you, Amanda?
What?
You're not married, are you?
Amanda's the one that gave me the pretty little doll, I guess, Angel. I'm going to take it home and find
Are
a
you and this
special.
local friends? When are you going home with us? Come to see us and stay some time up there. We
do
would be
that.
glad to
We'll go
have you
up
for
on
our
the
staff.
farm. We might even go up to Crossville and rent us a cabin. Stay a while. Would you like to do that? She's been to our house, Uncle Bob. She came to your birthday party. Dean didn't come.
Oh, I sure did.
You'll have to come in June this year. I'll be next year.
Be next year.
She's about gone.
You know, it always just interested me about
When David gets out of school, you and David can come up and spend
You know
the
what?
week.
The black people that lived up in there, because there wasn't a lot of them, but I think there's more than, you know, the history records more than people seem to remember.
They've always been a exodus of the black people up in there. There's
I wanna
only
go where
one
there's more of them.
in the city of Gainesville. There's no black people there now. They're gone. Now I know some of the old ones that was there that's not there now. And I can remember when there was black people there that and they would come over home and we lived there and do things for us. And, because Mama knew a lot of them when she was a girl, you know.
How did she know why?
But she was born there at the old mill place, old River Mill, where on the Northern River. And they lived up in that holler there, the black people. That's where she played with them when they was little.
So she was kind of friends with them in a way.
Yeah, I saw one of the old ones down there. When I was there in Carthage one day and I asked him if he knew them. Oh, yeah. He said, I'm 80-year-old, but I'll never forget if I live to be 180. The apple pies that Miss Mary Young used to make and give me when I was a little boy. He'd go by there, you know, and she'd give him apple pies to eat on.
Now that was her mother?
Yeah, that was my mama's mama.
Grandmother was Mary.
Yeah, those kids would all play together, him and Uncle Ed. And John Gore, that used to be the judge, Gore and all of them, them boys all fished together.
It's kind of funny how people always figure that in the South there was hatred and so forth. There was separation, but there wasn't real hatred a lot of sometimes. Sometimes they were together more on a personal level than...
Well, you know, when I lived on the farm, we had this black man that worked there. And Buddy was 3 or 4 year old and on up to 5 or 6 year old, and he was there on the farm. Buddy thought more of that old Everett. His name was Everett, but we called him Goober. He thought more of Goober than he did to anybody else, and he'd bring his lunch with him. He'd sit down to eat his lunch. In the cold weather, he'd come in our house and eat. And Buddy'd always go out and sit in his lap, have him eat his lunch. And he just thought the world of him. And he did Buddy too. He'd carry Buddy around, keep him. I got Buddy a new pair of little boots, and he didn't want him to get his boots dirty, and he'd carry them all around the barn and everywhere.
Was that when you lived in Carthage on the Turner farm?
I'd give Buddy enough money to buy that old fella a box of cigars every Christmas. He'd come in and say, about Christmas time, I ain't got no cigar. But he, get him a set of, get him a box of cigars. We'll eat some. You better turn around and get those gooses over there on that wall while we're gone. We don't want you making pictures of everybody eating them all
Dun,
up
dun,
tonight.
dun.
Thank you, Dean.
Sure.
That's really.
I saw you first.
You saw me first. I'm gonna get you. Are you ticklish? Are you ticklish?
New shoes, I got these last time I was down here.
Well, he was my roommate.
Shopping center there, I don't know which one, but there's so many of them over there in Franklin.
Oh, I had some strong suspicions after the first couple of days.
Wind's shoes.
At the end of the first quarter, I got him another guy, Dave Beard,
Same shoes, pretty short.
Karen?
Big, tall, heavy set guy. He was in American Metal Thursday.
It's all good on me.
He was supposed to meet you Thursday night. I said, I'm kidding. Because he was going over his consignment deal and he was having a problem carrying theirs. I guess production manager or supervisor, whatever, discussing it with her. I said, don't worry about it. I have problems with her. It's bad.
Still got it. You know, I'm gonna bring him back up here and we'll bring him up here. With Martin Chapman. Beaver tail?
Just call me.
I got the beaver tails. I got the tails separate. Well, that makes a good soup. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'll get the 25-pound turtle.
I'm still hanging out there on the back.
I was gonna say, it cured out there on the back porch all year.
That ought to make good stew.
No. That's a high.
Yeah, the tail. Even a chipboard.
Did Daddy get, did Daddy only get the board too?
No, I did.
I didn't get that.
How far did Daddy get?
I couldn't even get past half of the first
Yeah,
the first board.
Lives down at the end of the road. Just came back from Russia.
Yeah.
He told me that
Talking about Dave.
there is, in his opinion, very little way that they can
If I can
have
sell enough
any
to
kind of
cigarette
recovery
if I can find
10
somebody
years.
I'm gonna see
Have any what?
if we can pass the
Recovery.
trailer.
I don't think they can recover
But I
20.
want a new one. I just want
He said, well, what he said, I was trying not to exaggerate. He said, not in their lifetime.
Playing around.
Maybe ours, but not their
Well,
140
he said that in Moscow,
You want some turkey?
the public buildings are the only ones that have anything other than a hole for the men's room.
About every week you'll take off.
And not all of them are so equipped with bathrooms.
The house is too far down.
Yeah, he said the only people that have any money at all or any kind of lifestyle at all will be the high government officials, the high military officials,
That's where it's been.
and the, and he said there's a black market, and they live pretty well. And the rest of the people have nothing.
We got some city water
No
up there now.
running
It'll
water.
be a long time.
Yeah, the water line was
I'm
run.
gonna rush off. Did you run down in there? Huh? Then we better go.
Take an hour to get back on.
Debbie, don't tell me.
Repeat that board.
We've already been snacking some while y'all were in there reminiscing.
I was just a sit-in. I was keeping up with threes, but ages.
I can vouch for what she was saying. They nibbled all afternoon.
Oh, did you not?
They did, or
Did you tell them
was it they or
They,
we? I'm not gonna eat anything to eat at the outlet.
Well, I don't know either. Oh, we're going anyway. What, West End?
Yeah.
Too bad it's not this one up here.
If you get a little plate, you can get